Welcome. You've come just in time. The world behind you can rest now. The thoughts, the weight, the trying, all of it gently set down at the edge of this quiet place. Here, there are no clocks, no expectations, no questions to answer, just the hush of the night and a voice that has waited for you. You didn't have to earn this stillness. You didn't have to be more, do more, fix more. The forest, the wind, the moon, they already accept you. Tonight, you are not here to learn. You are here to let go. Let go of the regrets you carry. Let go of the tightness in your chest. Let go of trying to hold it all together. These stories are not loud. They are whispers. Whispers from the heart of the night. Whispers that remind you it's okay to rest. It's okay to loosen your grip. It's okay to be. Pause. Long breath in, ambient swell. In the quiet that follows, you may find what you've forgotten. That peace was never far, only silent, only waiting, like you. So close your eyes, if they're not already closed. Let your breath slow and let your body soften. You are safe, you are welcome, and you are home. Now, let the night begin. And now, the night will begin to speak, not in commands, but in quiet parables, gentle folds of wisdom wrapped in silence. The first story comes not with answers, but with an invitation to empty before you can be filled. This is the story of a master and a visitor with a very full cup. The empty cup. In the quiet mountains of a distant land, where the clouds seemed to rest upon the shoulders of the earth, there lived a Zen master known simply as Liang. His home was not a grand temple, but a humble wooden hut at the edge of a bamboo grove, where wind made music and silence spoke louder than words. People came from distant villages and great cities to seek Master Liang's wisdom. Some brought gifts, others brought burdens, most brought questions. One afternoon, as the golden light of dusk spilled through the swaying trees, a well-dressed scholar arrived. He wore fine robes stitched with silver thread. His boots were polished, his scrolls neatly tucked into a leather satchel. His name was Haru, and he introduced himself with a bow, but not too low. "I have studied the sutras," he began, "and read over 100 commentaries. I have debated the best monks in the province. I've come to learn from you, Master Liang, though I know much already." The master nodded without expression. He gestured to a cushion opposite him. "Please," he said, "sit." The wind outside stirred gently, and bamboo leaves whispered secrets to one another. Haru sat, There was silence. He cleared his throat. Perhaps I should tell you of my current understanding of emptiness, impermanence, and the nature of suffering. Liang smiled faintly. Before that, he said softly, would you care for tea? Haru nodded, straightening his back. Of course. The master moved slowly, deliberately. He poured the tea with grace, his movements fluid, quiet. The clay cup filled steadily as the aroma of roasted leaves drifted into the air. But then, he kept pouring. The cup filled to the brim, then overflowed. Tea spilled onto the tray, then onto Haru's robes. Startled, the scholar jumped. Master Liang, the cup is full. It can't hold any more. Liang set the teapot down and looked into Haru's eyes. Exactly, he said. You are like this cup, so full of your own ideas, your own conclusions, your own importance, that there is no space left for anything new. Silence fell again, but this time it pressed gently on Haru's shoulders. The wind outside exhaled. Haru stared at the cup, then at his soaked robes, then at the old master who had not raised his voice once and yet had unsettled something deep within him. He looked down and bowed again, this time much lower. Please, he said, teach me how to empty my cup. The master nodded once. That was the real beginning of their conversation. As you breathe now, perhaps you too feel where your cup is full of shoulds, full of stories, full of noise, and maybe, just maybe, tonight is not about finding more to carry, but quietly letting something spill over and wash away. No effort, just breath, just stillness, just sleep. The night continues to deepen, and with it, the quiet grows. Like tea cooling in a cup, you may feel your mind settling, your thoughts softening. Let go of whatever is still clinging. There's no need to hold on. You are safe here, still held. And now another story rises, gentle as moonlight. A story about imperfection and the hidden beauty of broken things. Let us listen. Let us drift. The Cracked Bowl. Long ago, in a quiet village wrapped in misty hills, there lived a monk named Tomo. He was not a famous teacher, nor was he particularly wise, but he was gentle. Tomo had lived at the temple since he was a boy. Now, with gray in his hair and deep creases at the corners of his smile, he swept the same garden paths each morning and lit the same lanterns each night. Among his daily duties was one simple task: to serve tea to the monks during evening meditation. Each evening, as the sun melted behind the trees and the temple grew hushed, Tomo would carefully prepare the tea in the kitchen. He used a small tray with a wooden teapot and 2 old ceramic bowls. One bowl was smooth and round, white as cloud. The other was cracked. It had a thin fracture running down one side, sealed long ago with golden resin. One of those repairs made not to hide damage, but to honor it. Tomo always used the cracked bowl for himself. One night, as he poured the tea, a young monk named Ren approached him. "Why do you still use that bowl?" Ren asked. "It's flawed. It could leak. Wouldn't it be better to replace it?" Tomo smiled. "Come," he said, "I'll show you something." He led Ren outside. The moon was high. The wind was still. He set both tea bowls on the stone steps, one flawless, one cracked. "Which one?" Tomo asked. "Looks more interesting under the moonlight." Ren studied them. The perfect bowl was smooth, clean, bright. But the cracked one, the golden line caught the moonlight in a way the other could not. It shimmered just slightly, as if it had a story to tell. "The crack," Tomo said softly, "let in the light." Ren looked again. "But it's broken," he said. "No," Tomo replied. "It's been broken, and it's been healed. Now it's stronger in that place, not weaker." He picked up the cracked bowl, warm with tea. Many people think perfection is strength, but often it's the places where we've been mended that shine the brightest. He paused, then added, "And the things we try to hide. Sometimes those are the things that teach us how to hold gently." Ren didn't reply, but his eyes lingered on the golden seam. He would remember that bowl for the rest of his life. As you lie here now, perhaps you too carry a crack, a regret, a moment you wish you could erase, a scar only you feel. But maybe, just maybe, that crack is not a flaw. It's the place where your strength returned. It's where the light came in. Let go of the story that says you must be whole to be worthy. Let go of the pressure to hide your mending. Tonight, your cracks are beautiful, and you are enough, just as you are. And so, even a cracked bowl can teach us the beauty of what's been mended. As you breathe slowly, perhaps there's something in you that's been patched, too. Something once broken, now shining quietly in the dark. Let that thought stay with you as we move into the next story. A gentle tale of silence, resistance, and a wind that changed everything. Let us begin. The Gatekeeper and the Wind. In a small village at the edge of the northern mountains, there was a solitary stone gate. It stood alone, weathered and unmoving, at the start of a winding forest path that led to nowhere in particular. This gate had no walls, no signs, and no reason to be there. But every evening, just before the sun fell behind the ridges, An old man came and stood by the gate. He wore a long robe of faded brown. His eyes were soft but steady. He leaned on a carved staff and carried nothing else. The villagers called him the gatekeeper. What he was guarding, no one knew. He never spoke of it, never stopped anyone from passing through. He simply watched, and when the breeze stirred the trees, he would close his eyes and listen. Like the rustle of leaves was a message only he could understand. Children would whisper, "He's guarding a secret treasure." Elders would mutter, "He's just lonely." Merchants said, "It's madness. There's nothing beyond that gate." But he kept coming, every evening, for years. Then one day, a traveler arrived in the village. She was young, cloaked in midnight blue, with a satchel full of questions and a gaze that never lingered long in one place. She heard of the gatekeeper and grew curious. Why would someone guard a gate? That led to nowhere. So one evening, as the sun folded itself into the hills, she approached the old man. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her, only listened to the wind. "I've come to ask you something," she said softly. He nodded, almost imperceptibly. She gestured to the path beyond. "There's nothing there. No village, no shrine, no home. Why do you stand guard?" The old man finally turned to her. His voice was gentle, yet carried the weight of many winters. "I do not guard the path," he said. "I guard the threshold." She frowned. "Threshold?" He tapped his staff against the stone beneath them. "This gate marks where noise becomes silence, where control gives way to trust, where those who pass begin to let go." The traveler sat down beside him. "I don't understand," she admitted. The wind whispered between the trees. He said nothing. She tried again. "I've let go of many things," she said. "People, places, even parts of myself. But the more I let go, the heavier I feel. Isn't release supposed to bring freedom?" The gatekeeper smiled, not unkindly. "Many mistake letting go for forgetting," he said. "They try to throw things away, pretend they were never there. But real release is not rejection, it's integration." She looked up at the trees above them. The sky was turning violet. "I don't want to carry my pain," she whispered. "I want it to dissolve." "It will," he replied, "but not when pushed. Letting go is like the wind. You don't command it. You simply stop resisting." Silence sat between them. It wasn't awkward. It was full, alive. And then, for the first time that evening, the wind changed. It blew stronger, then stilled, then stronger again, pushing through the gate, bending the grasses, whistling through the trees. The gatekeeper closed his eyes. "Listen," he said. The traveler did. And in that wind, something old inside her began to shift, not disappear, but soften. She suddenly felt the tears coming, unasked, unfamiliar. They weren't bitter, they were cleansing. And when the wind finally quieted, she opened her eyes and realized the old man was no longer looking at her. He was looking through the gate. The traveler rose. "I think I understand," she said. The gatekeeper didn't answer, but nodded again. She walked to the gate, paused, then turned back. "Will you come with me?" He smiled again. "No, I must stay, for those who haven't yet arrived." She hesitated, then bowed deeply. As she stepped through the gate, the forest didn't change, but she had. The wind stirred once more, this time at her back. There are moments in life when the greatest wisdom does not shout, but waits quietly at the edge of our understanding. And as the wind fades, we carry the memory of the gatekeeper. That true letting go is not about erasing, but about meeting each moment without resistance. Now, as the night deepens, we step into another story, one where stillness becomes strength, and the path forward is lit not by certainty, but by presence. The bell that wouldn't ring. In a temple high in the misty mountains of the east, where the clouds kissed the rooftops and the pine trees whispered to each other through the fog, there stood a great bronze bell. It was beautiful, tall and wide, cast by the most skilled artisans in the region, and adorned with delicate etchings of dragons, lotus flowers, and silent waves. The bell had one purpose: to call the monks to meditation at dawn. But there was a problem. It never rang. The monks tried again and again. They struck it with wooden mallets. They checked the surface for cracks. They even brought in monks from other temples to try. Still, the bell stayed silent. No chime, no echo, only stillness. Some called it cursed. Others said it was too proud to serve. The abbot, an aging monk named Master Kien, simply listened. He observed. He said nothing. One day, a wandering novice named Mai arrived at the temple. She was quiet, observant, and unusually thoughtful for someone so young. When she heard the story of the silent bell, she asked if she could visit it. The monks laughed softly. "Go ahead," they said, "but it's been mute for years." Mai entered the bell tower alone. The structure was wrapped in silence so thick it felt sacred. She sat beneath the bell and simply listened, not for sound, but for what the silence was trying to say. She returned the next morning, then the next, and the next. For 7 days, she said nothing. She just sat with the bell. On the 8th day, she approached Master Kien. "I think I understand," she said. He raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The bell, she began, is not refusing to ring. It's waiting to be asked differently. Kian nodded, as if he had been waiting for someone to see that truth. That evening, instead of using the heavy mallet, Mai approached the bell with nothing but her palm. She placed her hand on the cold bronze and whispered, "I will not strike you. I will only ask." Then she stepped back and bowed. The bell did not ring, but something changed. That night, the wind moved differently around the bell tower. The trees hushed, and in the distance, a soft vibration echoed through the valley, not from force, but from stillness. Not everything responds to noise. Not every barrier breaks with pressure. Sometimes, the most powerful awakening comes not from hammering harder, but from finally listening. We often approach our own hearts like that silent bell, forcing answers, pushing change, demanding release. But what if we simply placed a hand on what hurts and whispered, "I won't strike, I will only ask"? Let this story stay with you tonight. Let it soften the edges of your own questions. There is a bell in you too, and it knows when to ring. In stillness, it already has. The bell did not ring because it did not need to. In its stillness, it taught us that not all awakenings arrive with sound. Some unfold in silence. Now, let that silence stay with you. Let it echo in your chest, soft and calm. The night deepens, the breath softens, and like the gentle path that leads deeper into the forest, another story now appears. A tale of a monk, a tree, and the art of releasing what we cling to most. Let us listen, not with ears, but with the space between thoughts. The Tree of 10,000 Leaves. In the courtyard of a secluded monastery, nestled between silver mist and terraced mountains, there grew a peculiar tree. It wasn't the tallest in the forest, nor the oldest. Its trunk was slim, its bark pale and weathered, but its crown was vast, so vast that the monks called it the Tree of 10,000 Leaves. Every autumn, when the wind cooled and the sky turned a soft gray blue, the tree would shed its leaves, not all at once, but gradually, like a slow exhale stretched across weeks. And the leaves, each one, looked different. Some were long and slender, some curled like little scrolls, some golden, some deep red, others green, holding on as if they hadn't yet noticed the season changing. No one quite understood why the tree kept such variety. It was said the tree had once stood at the center of a great city, but had been moved to the monastery by monks who believed it held a lesson within its branches. One day, A young monk named Tama stood beneath the tree, staring up, his brow furrowed with questions. He was troubled, though he didn't yet know why. He had done everything right. He rose with the bell. He swept the stone paths. He memorized sutras and practiced silence. But his heart still felt full of thoughts, of restlessness, of something that clung tightly just below the surface. He asked his teacher, a calm and weathered monk named Soryu, "Master, I feel I'm doing all I should, but inside, it's noisy. I want to let go, but I don't even know what I'm holding." Soryu smiled and placed a hand on Tama's shoulder. "Then perhaps," he said, "you should visit the tree when it lets go." And so, Tama began to sit beneath the tree of 10,000 leaves each morning at sunrise. The first day, he saw a single leaf fall. It spun gently, landed silently on the earth. Tama stared at it for a long time. The next day, 2 more leaves drifted down. One landed beside him. He picked it up, turned it over. It had tiny ridges along the edge, a small tear near the tip. The day after, 7 leaves, then 12, then dozens. Each day, Tama watched, and slowly the tree changed. It didn't cling. It didn't resist. It simply released, quietly, without regret. No ceremony, no panic, just trust in the rhythm of things. On the 10th day, Tama finally spoke aloud. "Is this what letting go is?" The tree, of course, didn't answer, but a breeze moved through its branches, and a small shower of leaves fell at once. Surrounding him in color, motion, and stillness all at once, he began to cry, not from sadness, but from recognition. Each leaf felt like a thought he had once tried to control, a memory, a mistake, a version of himself he had carried too long. And the tree showed him they didn't have to be forced out. They would fall when the time was kind enough. From that day on, Tama changed his meditation. He no longer tried to quiet the noise. He listened to it, let it rise, let it pass. And every time a thought returned, he whispered to it, "Like a leaf, you will fall, and I will remain." By the time the last leaf dropped that season, Tama no longer felt full inside. He felt spacious, open, and that space wasn't empty. It was peaceful. When Soryu found him days later, Tama bowed deeply. "I understand now," he said. Soryu nodded. "Then go," he replied. "Go where?" asked Tama. Soryu smiled. "Wherever the next leaf leads. Letting go doesn't require you to be ready. It only requires you to be present. Some burdens fall quickly, some hold on for a while, but all will loosen if we stop clutching. You are not the wind, you are the tree. and your leaves will know when it's time. The tree released its leaves, and in doing so, it released us. Not all letting go must be loud. Some of it happens in the quiet between breath and thought. And now, the path takes one more turn, not through falling leaves, but through the stillness of a single pond. Let us follow, with no weight, no hurry, just presence. A new story waits. Let us drift into it. The pond and the passing cloud. There was once a monastery built beside a pond so still, the monks said it mirrored the soul. It wasn't grand or deep, just a wide, shallow basin fed by rain and time. Surrounded by reeds and soft stones, the pond reflected everything: clouds, trees, birds, even the breath of the wind. It had no name. The monks never named things that were already complete. In this monastery lived a young monk named Ari, who struggled with his emotions. He smiled often, bowed with grace, and completed every chore with care. But his thoughts swirled like wind in a canyon. He would sit to meditate, but soon found himself filled with frustration. Why was he distracted? Why couldn't he just feel peace? And worst of all, why did anger rise when he tried so hard to be calm? One morning, after a particularly restless night, Ari sat by the pond with his fists clenched. The sky above was pale. A single gray cloud drifted slowly overhead, mirrored perfectly on the water's surface. Ari threw a small stone into the pond, hard. It rippled outward. The cloud disappeared. "I ruin everything," he muttered. "My thoughts, my practice, even this reflection." He buried his face in his hands, ashamed. An older monk, Master Tomo, had been watching quietly from the edge of the trees. He stepped forward, his footsteps soft on the grass. Without a word, Tomo sat beside Ari and looked at the rippling water. Then he asked, "What do you see?" Arisi glanced up. "The cloud is gone," he said bitterly. "I made it disappear." "No," Tomo said gently. "The cloud is still there. Look up." Ari followed his gaze. The cloud floated calmly in the sky. Tomo continued, "You didn't destroy the cloud. You disturbed the pond. The reflection changed, but not the sky." Ari sat in silence. Tomo reached for a small pebble and placed it in Ari's palm. "Try again," he said, "but this time with kindness." Ari hesitated. Then he dropped the pebble lightly. It plunked softly. Tiny ripples spread, gentle as breath. The cloud wavered, then returned. Ari's eyes widened. "You see," Tomo said, "the pond is your mind, and thoughts are just clouds. They pass, they return, but the sky, your deeper self, remains untouched." From that day forward, Ari began to observe his mind like the surface of the pond. When anger came, he didn't fight it. He watched. He let it ripple. And in time, it stilled. Not because he forced it away, but because he stopped throwing stones. We often believe that our thoughts define us, that a moment of anger means failure, that restlessness is a sign of weakness. But your mind is not the ripple, it is the water beneath. And even when the reflection is shaken, the sky remains. So the next time your thoughts swirl, pause, breathe, look up. The cloud is still there, and it was never angry at you. And so, the pond stayed still, not because nothing touched it, but because it learned how to return to stillness. Your mind is the same. Even when stirred, it remembers how to rest. Now, as night folds deeper into itself, let us walk a little further into the hills where one old monk lived alone and a traveler came seeking answers. What they found was not a teaching, but a bowl of rice and silence. Let's listen. The story is waiting. The monk who served in silence. In a mist-covered village, nestled between two mountains, travelers often passed through, seeking temples, answers, or simply a warm place to rest. Most would stop at the large monastery near the southern gate, but a few, those who wandered a little further, would find a smaller, quieter dwelling. It had no name on its gate, no bell tower, no crowds, just a simple wooden door and a bowl resting on a stone ledge. Inside lived a monk named Kenji. No one knew where he came from. No one had ever heard him speak. But he was known, quietly, by many as the silent monk who serves. Kenji's vow was not one of mystery, but of listening. Years ago, as a novice, he had studied under a master who once told him, "Words are useful, but they are not always needed. Listen long enough, and the world begins to speak without sound." Kenji had taken that lesson deeply to heart. Since then, he had spoken no words, but through gestures, movement, and stillness, he communicated everything. Each morning, before the sun rose, Kenji lit incense. He swept the stone path. He boiled tea, prepared rice, and placed a warm bowl on the ledge outside. No signs, no rules. But travelers knew, if you were tired, the monk would feed you, and if your heart was heavy, he would simply sit beside you, without judgment, without noise. One day, a young man named Ryota arrived in the village. He was weary, not from travel, but from life. He had left his home after a long argument with his father. Words had been sharp, blame had been loud, and now Ryota wandered, angry, lost, and alone. Someone in the village told him about the silent monk. With nothing to lose, Ryota went. When he arrived, he saw the bowl. He hesitated. No one was around. Was he allowed? Just then, the door opened slowly. Kenji appeared. Old, thin, peaceful. He gave a small bow, stepped forward, and with both hands offered a new bowl of warm rice and tea. Ryota took it and sat on the stone steps. The monk sat beside him, hands folded, eyes soft. For a long while, they said nothing. Only the wind spoke, and the steam from the tea curled gently in the air. Eventually, Ryota blurted out, "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know why I'm here." Kenji didn't flinch. He simply poured more tea, then gestured to the rice. Ryota ate, slowly, thoughtfully. When he finished, he looked over. The monk held a small wooden box. He opened it. Inside, a single brush and a square of parchment. Kenji offered it to him. Ryota stared, confused. Kenji dipped the brush in ink and motioned. "Write one word, just one." Ryota paused. Then, with shaking hand, he wrote, "Anger." Kenji nodded slowly, then bowed. He pointed to a small fire burning in a clay bowl. Ryota understood. He placed the paper in the flames. The parchment curled, blackened, and disappeared. Ash floated upward. The monk gently took the brush again. He offered Ryota a new parchment. "One more," he gestured. This time, Ryota thought for a long while. He finally wrote, "Father." The monk didn't smile. He simply held Ryota's gaze, then bowed. Together, they placed the paper into the fire. Ryota watched it burn, his jaw tight, his chest trembling. But when the flame swallowed the last edge of ink, he exhaled deeply, as if a weight had been placed down somewhere unseen. For 3 more days, Ryota returned. He didn't talk much. He ate rice, poured tea, burned more words. Regret, blame, pride. And on the last day, he wrote a new word, forgiveness. He burned it too, but this time he smiled. Not because it was over, but because it had begun. Before leaving, Ryota bowed deeply to Kenji. Still, the monk said nothing. But as Ryota turned to go, Kenji handed him the small wooden box. Ryota opened it, empty now. Just a brush and space for new words. Sometimes we do not need advice. We do not need more noise. We need space, stillness, a warm bowl of rice, and the quiet presence of someone who holds no judgment. Let go of the idea that you must speak to be heard, that you must fight to be understood. Some healing begins not with words, but with a shared silence. And so the traveler left, with nothing but an empty wooden box and a little more peace than before. Not all wisdom is spoken. Some is shared in silence, and some in simple acts like serving rice or burning a single word to ash. Now, let us follow another path, this time to a forest clearing, where a child once wandered with a question, and the answer came not from a monk, but from a single falling leaf. Let us begin. The leaf that didn't hold on. In the early days of autumn, the forest turned golden. The breeze had grown cooler, the air was crisp, and the ground was painted with fallen leaves. And in a small village at the edge of this forest, a child named Toma lived with his grandmother. Toma was a curious boy. Quiet, wide-eyed, always asking questions. But this year, as the trees began to shed their leaves, a new kind of question stirred in him. One he didn't know how to ask. One morning, while gathering firewood near the forest path, Toma stopped beneath a large maple tree. Its leaves shimmered orange and gold in the morning sun, but one leaf, a deep red one, remained tightly clinging to a low branch. The other branches had begun to let go, but not this one. Toma stared at it. He whispered, "Why haven't you fallen?" The leaf said nothing, but something about it made him feel like it was holding on too tightly, afraid to fall. Toma reached out, but didn't pluck it. Instead, he ran home, his mind full of thoughts. That night, over rice and broth, he finally asked his grandmother, "Ba-chan, do trees feel afraid when their leaves fall?" The old woman looked up, her eyes soft and kind. "Perhaps not the trees," she said, "but sometimes the leaves do." Toma blinked. He hadn't expected an answer like that. "But why would they be afraid?" he asked. His grandmother stirred her tea. "Because they forget that falling is not the end. They don't know what waits for them when they let go." She smiled gently. Some become part of the soil. Some are carried by wind. Some are stepped on by foxes and children. But all return, in some form. Toma's face grew thoughtful. "So the leaf isn't dying. It's just changing." His grandmother nodded. "Just like everything." The next day, Toma returned to the maple tree. The red leaf was still there, still clinging. He sat beneath it, watched it tremble in the breeze, and then, almost without thinking, he spoke softly. "You don't have to be afraid. My grandma says falling is just another way of becoming." A bird chirped overhead. The wind blew gently, and then, without sound, the leaf finally let go. It twirled, spun once, and landed in Toma's lap. He held it like a treasure. Not because it was rare, but because he had witnessed its trust in the fall. That night, Toma placed the red leaf on his bedside table. He stared at it in the moonlight, thinking of all the things he was afraid to let go of. Old toys, angry words, his fear of the dark. He whispered, "Maybe I can fall too, and it'll be okay." As seasons passed, the maple tree lost all its leaves. Then snow came, then spring, then summer again. And by the time the next autumn arrived, Toma had grown taller, a little wiser. He no longer feared the forest at night. He no longer cried when the wind howled. And when the first leaves began to fall again, he smiled. He walked to the tree, bowed gently, and whispered, "Thank you," because the leaf that once held on had taught him how to let go. We often hold on because we forget that the fall is not the end, but life, like nature, has its seasons, and letting go is not failure. It's trust. Trust that something will catch you. Trust that you will become again. When we release, we return, just like the leaf. The leaf fell, not because it gave up, but because it understood. Its journey wasn't over. It was simply changing form. Letting go is not always loss. Sometimes it's a quiet return to the flow we were meant to follow. Now, we travel deeper into the stillness, to the banks of a wide river, where a fisherman rows each morning in silence, and one day he drops his oar. On purpose, let us join him. The oar he let drift. There once was an old fisherman who lived by the river's edge, in a wooden shack that creaked with every breeze. He was neither rich nor famous, but every morning before dawn, he would untie his simple wooden boat and row into the wide, misty river. The villagers called him the Oar, not for what he did, but for how still he seemed when he did it. He rowed alone, always alone, but not because he disliked company. He had once been surrounded by it. Years ago, his boat had been filled with laughter, with dreams, with a wife who sang as they floated downstream, and a child who asked the sky 1,000 questions. That time was now a memory, tucked away like the folded cloth of his fishing net. Then came the flood, and after the flood, only silence remained. The man had not spoken much since. His only companion now was the rhythm of the oar. Dip, pull, glide, dip, pull, glide. Each stroke took him away from the shore, but never from his thoughts. One morning, the mist was particularly thick. The world felt hushed, like the sky was holding its breath. The fisherman rowed into the blank canvas of the river, where even his own reflection disappeared. He paused, laid the oar across his lap, closed his eyes, and then, without much thought, he lifted the oar and dropped it into the river. It landed with a soft splash, then drifted away, spinning gently like a leaf on the current. He watched it go, felt no panic, no regret. For the first time in many years, he felt light. His hands, always gripped with calluses and memory, rested open in his lap. The boat floated wherever the water wished to carry it. He did not guide it. He did not resist. He simply sat, listening, breathing, being. And in that stillness, he heard something deeper than silence. He remembered that the river had always moved, with or without him, that he had not needed to row so hard against the currents of grief. Some burdens, he now realized, aren't meant to be carried, only acknowledged and released. The sun rose through the mist, and the fisherman let out a breath. Not heavy, not sad, just free. When the boat eventually drifted back to shore, the villagers saw him standing, his hands open at his sides, his face softened by something they couldn't name. They asked him where his oar was. He smiled. "I don't row anymore," he said softly. "I float." And from that day forward, he still went to the river, but not to fight it. He went to be carried. The fisherman no longer rowed, not because he gave up, but because he finally trusted the current. Sometimes surrender is not weakness, but wisdom. Now, as the night deepens and the stars settle above the treetops, we find ourselves near a mountain path where a young boy walked with a heavy heart, clutching a stone he could not put down. He believed it was his to carry until someone showed him how to place it gently and walk on. Let's listen now to the story of the boy and the stone. The weight he thought was his. There was once a young boy named Jiro who lived in a village tucked between quiet mountains. His days were simple: school, chores, and time spent playing beneath the cedar trees. But Jiro carried something that no one could see: a stone. Not just any stone, but a small, smooth, dark gray rock that he kept in his pocket everywhere he went. It wasn't valuable, or shiny, or rare, but it was heavy, not in size, but in meaning. He picked it up the day his father left. It had been sudden. A door closed, words spoken too fast, and then absence. Jiro found the stone just outside the house that same day, and without knowing why, he picked it up. Since then, it had been his companion. He took it to school, held it during storms, gripped it when he couldn't sleep, and even though no one asked about it, he wished they would. Years passed. The stone remained. One morning, Jiro was asked to deliver rice to the temple at the top of the mountain path. It was a warm day. The basket was light, but as he climbed, the weight in his pocket grew heavier. Every step stirred something inside him, a quiet anger, a buried sadness. Halfway up the trail, he sat beneath a tree and held the stone in his hand. He whispered, "Why am I still carrying you?" The stone didn't answer, but his hand trembled. A voice spoke from nearby, old, kind, and steady. "Because no one told you, you didn't have to." Startled, Jiro looked up. An old monk stood at the path's edge, holding a walking stick and a half smile. The boy quickly put the stone back in his pocket. "It's nothing," he said. The monk sat beside him. "Even nothing has weight if you carry it long enough." They sat in silence. Then the monk asked, "May I see it?" Jiro hesitated, then handed over the stone. The monk turned it in his hand, held it to the light, then gently set it on the ground between them. "Now," he said, "tell me what it means." And so, for the first time, Jiro spoke. He told of the day his father left, of the silence that followed, of the way the stone made him feel connected, like it held a piece of what was missing. When he finished, the monk nodded slowly. "You gave your pain a shape," he said, "so it wouldn't float away." Jiro blinked. "Is that wrong?" The monk smiled. "No, it's human. But now that you've named it, you can decide." Jiro looked at the stone. It hadn't changed, but he had. After a long moment, he stood, took the stone, and walked to the edge of the path, where a stream trickled beneath mossy rocks. He paused. Then, with a quiet breath, he placed the stone gently in the water. Not thrown, not discarded, released. The stream carried it out of sight, and for the first time in years, his pocket was empty. His steps, light. He delivered the rice, returned down the path, and though the world looked the same, it felt different. Because Jiro had learned that not all burdens are meant to be solved. Some are simply meant to be set down. What we carry for a reason. But sometimes we forget we have the choice to let it go, to give shape to our pain so we can honor it, and then return it to the river of life. As you lie here, listening, ask yourself, what weight have I named? And is it time to place it gently into the current? The stone no longer pressed against his leg. The current carried it away, but the lesson remained. Letting go does not erase the past. It simply frees the hands so they may hold something new. Now, as night deepens around us, we walk a different path, a forest trail dusted with fallen pine needles, where an old woman once returned, not to find something, but to release a name she had whispered for decades. Let us listen now. The name she gave back to the wind. In a village where the trees whispered through the seasons and the wind carried stories like birdsong, there lived an old woman named Hannah. Her hair had gone silver long ago, but her eyes were sharp, like the morning frost that coated her windows every autumn. Every morning, she swept the same patch of earth outside her small wooden house. She didn't do it for tidiness, though the path was always clean. She did it for something else. She was waiting for a whisper, for a memory, for forgiveness. Long ago, before the village knew her as Old Hannah, she had been a young woman with a heart filled with fire. She had loved someone, a traveler, a wanderer who spoke in poetry and disappeared with the spring rains. They had met beneath the cherry blossoms. They had danced by lantern light. And then he was gone. He left no letter, no promise, only a name she had carved into the inside of her heart, like a secret door that would never open again. She never spoke the name aloud, but she carried it for decades. She built a life, tended a garden, raised a son. She was kind to her neighbors. She laughed at children's jokes. But when the wind blew a certain way, her eyes would search the horizon for someone who would never return. And in the quiet of night, she would whisper the name into her pillow like a prayer. One morning, as the leaves turned to gold, Hannah woke before dawn and stepped outside. But this time, she did not bring her broom. She walked beyond the edge of the village, past the footpath lined with mossy stones, into the old forest where few dared to go. She carried only one thing: a slip of parchment and a memory. She found a clearing where the trees opened just enough for light to spill in. There, she knelt. She unfolded the parchment. On it, the name, written in trembling script. She had written it the night before, not to remember, but to let go. She took a breath that tasted of pine and aid. Then, holding the paper in both hands, she whispered, "You were a season I held on to, but I'm ready now for the next." She tore the parchment slowly, not in anger, in reverence. She let the pieces fall. The wind caught them, lifted them gently into the air, then carried them away like petals. The name, once etched into her bones, was no longer hers to keep. That night, she slept deeply, without dreams. The next morning, she swept her path again. But her face had changed. There was no more searching in her eyes, only peace. A stillness like freshly fallen snow. A child in the village asked her why she was smiling. She leaned close and whispered, "Because the wind and I finally said goodbye. We carry names, not just of people, but of moments, regrets, echoes of what if. And sometimes, what heals us is not holding them tighter, but honoring them and letting the wind do the rest. Tonight, if a name lingers in your mind, a person, a time, a memory, ask yourself, is it ready to fly? Let it lift. Let it drift. Let it go. Some names are not meant to be kept. Some seasons are meant to end. But in letting go, we do not lose what was. We make space for what may come. Now, the wind has quieted. The stars blink slowly overhead, and deep in the forest, a young monk wakes each morning to the same question written on the inside of his thoughts. What do I still carry that I don't need anymore? His journey doesn't begin with movement, but stillness. Let us follow him now. The bowl he emptied without a sound. In the quiet hills of the eastern mountains stood a humble monastery. It was not grand or gilded, but peaceful, shaped by wind and time and the scent of pine. There lived a young monk there named Ren. He had arrived as a boy, full of questions and a heart that stirred too easily. Now, older and quieter, he still wrestled with a question the wind could not answer. Why did his heart feel heavy when his hands were empty? Ren was diligent. He swept, chanted, served tea. He bowed to elders and smiled gently to strangers. But inside, he carried a kind of restlessness, a pressure without form. Each morning, after chores, he walked to the river behind the temple. There, he sat with his alms bowl resting in his lap, its round shape echoing something he didn't quite understand. One day, while the mist still clung to the trees, the abbot appeared beside him, wordless, and sat. They watched the river. The water danced with morning light, their bowls empty. Finally, Ren spoke. I have nothing, and still I feel full, but not with peace. The abbot nodded. Then perhaps you are not full, but cluttered. Ren frowned. With what? With what you no longer need, said the abbot. Memories, expectations, ideas of who you think you must be. He reached for Ren's bowl and tilted it gently. The empty bowl, light as air, made no sound, but something in Ren's chest shifted, as if he had been tipped. They sat in silence. Ren closed his eyes. What filled his bowl? Unseen, he imagined. The pressure to always be calm, the need to impress the elder monks, the grief he never named for a mother he barely remembered. He imagined each as a small stone inside his bowl, and one by one he emptied them. Not with his hands, but with breath and willingness. The wind stirred. A leaf fell gently into the water. Ren opened his eyes. The abbot had gone, but his bowl remained, still empty, but now different. He stood. The bowl felt lighter, but it was he who had changed. That night, he placed the bowl by his sleeping mat. He bowed to it, not as a vessel for food, but as a mirror of his inner world. From that day forward, Ren returned to the river often, not to ask questions, but to listen. And when new burdens arrived, as they always do, he would sit quietly, hold the bowl in his lap, and empty them again. Not once, but as many times as it took. We all carry bowls, not always visible, but always there. They fill over time with fears, regrets, the weight of roles we never asked for. And we wonder why rest feels elusive, why silence grows loud. But perhaps the peace we seek is not in what we add, but in what we empty. Tonight, imagine the bowl in your lap. Breathe in. And as you exhale, let something go. The bowl may be empty, but the heart can be full. Not with burdens, but with stillness, with the quiet relief of not holding everything. And so we continue deeper into the forest, where a narrow trail winds past a quiet glade, and a weathered gate stands open, welcoming all who are ready to release the weight of proving. Here lives an old calligrapher who once chased perfection until he learned that every mistake was part of the art. Let us follow him now. The ink that didn't dry. In a small temple perched on a hill overlooking rice fields lived a calligrapher named Sora. He was known throughout the region for his brushwork, how the ink seemed to breathe on the page, how his strokes flowed like water, unforced, inevitable. But what no one saw, what he never showed, were the stacks of torn pages in his room. Pages smudged, imperfect, rejected. Pages that whispered one word again and again: not good enough. Sora began each morning before sunrise. He lit incense, prepared his ink with slow circular motion, and unrolled fresh parchment. And always, he hesitated before the first stroke. What if it didn't come out right? What if his hand trembled? What if someone saw the mistake? Even when alone, he feared an unseen audience. One day, after a particularly frustrating morning, he stormed out of the temple with his brush still wet. He walked to a nearby stream, sat beneath an old cedar, and asked the forest aloud, "Why must perfection haunt every stroke?" A voice replied, not from the trees, but from within. "Who told you perfection was the goal. Sora blinked. The breeze stirred the grass. That night, unable to sleep, he returned to his desk. But instead of his finest paper, he picked up the oldest, crinkled scraps. Instead of steadying his hand, he let it move freely, messy, uneven, alive. And he whispered to the paper, "You don't have to be beautiful. You just have to be true." He drew circles that overlapped, lines that strayed, characters he had never dared write in public. And when the ink bled, he smiled. When a drop smudged the corner, he left it. Something had shifted. The next day, he displayed those imperfect pages on the temple gate. Visitors stared, confused. Some frowned. A child pointed and laughed. And Sora bowed deeply to all of them, not for approval, but for liberation. Over time, people came not to see his flawless pieces, but his honest ones. They found comfort in his smudges, his uneven edges. It reminded them of themselves. And Sora, for the first time in years, felt light. The ink still didn't always dry the way he expected, but now he let it run. Sometimes we don't need to get it right. We need to release the need to get it right. Mistakes are not signs of failure. They are signatures of aliveness. Tonight, if you are holding yourself to impossible standards, if your breath tightens when things aren't just so, pause. Let the ink run. Let the stroke be wobbly. Let it be real. The beauty you seek might be hidden in the smudge. Smudges on paper, footprints on paths. The traces we leave behind are not imperfections. They are proof that we moved, that we lived. Now, as the night deepens and the air grows still, we drift to a forgotten temple near the edge of the forest, where an old bell once rang every morning, until it cracked. The monks thought it broken, but one saw something else, a sound that was softer but truer. Let us enter now into a story called The Bell That Wasn't Thrown Away. High in the cloud-covered hills of a northern village stood a small temple made of cedar wood and stone. It had no golden statues, no painted ceilings, no pilgrims queuing outside. But every morning, a bell rang across the valley, deep, gentle, and unmistakably human. That bell had a story. And like most stories that matter, it began with something broken. Years ago, the bell had been flawless, cast from bronze with a wide mouth and carved lotus patterns around its base. It had sung every sunrise into being. It was struck with care by a monk named Jen, a man known for few words and a kindness that didn't need many. But one winter, a storm howled across the mountain. The bell tower shuddered under the weight of snow, and when morning came, Jian found a long crack slicing through the side of the bell. It still rang, but the sound was off, muffled, wounded. The head monk frowned. "A broken bell reflects a broken temple," he said. "We will have it removed. We'll request a new one from the capital." The younger monks agreed, but Jian didn't. He said nothing, just bowed, and spent the night alone beside the cracked bell. The next morning, while the others prepared breakfast, Jian struck the bell again. The sound wavered, but lingered. It was softer now, less commanding, but still it rang. Villagers down below heard it and paused in their morning chores. A few even smiled. "The old bell sounds gentle today," one said. "It sounds like it's listening." When the new bell arrived, larger, heavier, gleaming, the monks prepared a small ceremony to welcome it, but as the moment neared, they found Jian kneeling before the cracked bell. He had polished it, tied a single white ribbon around its neck, and left a handwritten note at its base. "This bell is like us. Time has left its mark, but it still sings, and sometimes its softest sound reaches the furthest hearts." The abbot paused. He looked at Jian, then at the new bell, and finally back at the cracked one. No words were spoken, but the ceremony was canceled. The new bell was returned, and the old one remained. Years passed. The temple changed. Monks came and went. Jian grew older. His back curved like a bow. But the bell still rang every morning. And as it did, people came, not to worship perfection, but to sit with something that had been broken and still gave. One winter evening, a child visiting the temple pointed to the crack and asked, "Why didn't they fix it?" Jian smiled. "Because it already healed." Not all healing makes the wound disappear. Sometimes it leaves a line, a trace, a crack, but through it, a deeper sound emerges, stronger, maybe not, but truer. Tonight, if something in you feels cracked, don't silence it. Let it ring. Let the world hear what survived. The sound of the old bell fades, but the echo stays with us. Not every crack needs to be hidden. Not every flaw needs to be fixed. Some things, just as they are, become sacred through their honesty. Now, as we walk deeper into this gentle night, we come across an old bridge. Its wooden beams worn by time, its ropes creaking softly in the wind. No longer strong enough to carry crowds, but still able to carry one, if they walk slowly. This is where we meet a traveler, and a memory he carried too long. Let us enter now into a story called The Bridge That Waited. In a quiet valley, nestled between two hills, there once stood a wooden bridge, old, curved, and barely held together by weathered ropes and hope. It was not used anymore. A stone road had been built nearby, modern and strong, stretching over a concrete path. People chose efficiency, speed, reliability, but the old bridge remained, uncrossed, but not forgotten. Long ago, the bridge had carried many travelers. Laughter once echoed across its planks. Shoes padded along it on market mornings. Children ran across it chasing kites and each other, but time wore it down. The wind chipped the wood, the rains loosened the knots. Eventually, the town declared it unsafe. Signs were put up, ropes strung across to block passage, and it became a place of memory. Until one day, a man returned. He was older now, gray streaks in his beard, a deep stillness in his eyes. He stood at the edge of the old bridge and exhaled. A long, quiet exhale, like the end of a thought held for years. His name was Toma, and this bridge held a moment he had never let go of. Decades earlier, Toma had stood on that very bridge with his younger brother. They had fought over something neither of them could quite remember now. But back then, it felt massive. Pride had made Toma turn and walk away. He expected his brother to call him back, but he didn't, and neither of them crossed that bridge again. Time passed. Letters stopped. Seasons changed. Toma built a life in the city. Work, family, success even. But at night, he often dreamed of a bridge he had left uncrossed, of a silence that had never been broken. And in those dreams, the bridge was always waiting. Now, after hearing that his brother had passed quietly in his sleep, Toma returned. He stepped past the sign, unknotted the rope, and walked slowly across the creaking wood. Every step was memory. Every footfall a breath he had held in for years. He reached the middle and stopped. The same wind passed through. The same river flowed below. But the boy he once was and the brother he had lost were not there. Only stillness and a strange kind of peace. Toma closed his eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry. I was young. I thought distance made me right." He stayed on the bridge for hours, not waiting for a response, just letting go of the one he had carried too long. When he left, he tied a white ribbon to the rail and carved into the wood, "Some bridges don't carry us forward. They carry us back to where forgiveness lives." The next morning, villagers saw the ribbon. No one touched it. Some crossed the bridge for the first time in years. Others simply stood beside it, reading the carved words and remembering someone they had not forgiven, including themselves. There are bridges inside us, moments left unfinished, words left unsaid, paths we once refused to walk. Tonight, if one stirs in your heart, you don't need to run across it. You don't even need to repair it fully. Just stand there, acknowledge it, and maybe let a little light through. The bridge has waited, so have you. Some bridges carry forgiveness, others carry silence. And sometimes, the hardest journey isn't between two people, but between the person we were and the one we are trying to become. As the moon climbs higher above the trees, casting silver light through swaying branches, our path leads to a small wooden shrine hidden in the forest. There, a note is waiting, folded neatly, left behind by someone who couldn't say the words aloud. Let us enter now into a story called The Letter That Wasn't Sent. In a tiny, vine-wrapped shrine nestled between two cedar trees, there sat a small wooden box, unmarked, unguarded, and always open. It was called the Letter Shrine, not because letters were delivered there, but because letters were left there. For decades, villagers had come to this quiet forest clearing to write down what they could not say out loud. Letters of sorrow, longing, gratitude, or goodbye. No one read them. They weren't meant to be answered, only released. Some letters were full of anger, others of tears. A few were simply empty. Nothing written but the act of placing the paper down. And the box never filled. It never overflowed. Because each morning, the wind would come through, lift the letters gently, and carry them away. Or so the villagers believed. One autumn evening, a young woman named May arrived at the shrine. She had heard of it since she was a child. Her grandmother used to say, "When your heart is too full to speak, the trees will listen for you." May didn't know if she believed that, but her heart was full, overflowing, really. Her father had passed 2 seasons ago. They hadn't spoken in years, not since their last argument, the one that slammed doors and shut futures. And now, there was no way to take it back. She sat on the worn bench near the box, pulled out a piece of paper, and stared. The crickets chirped softly. The wind shifted in the branches. A leaf landed beside her hand, but May's pen didn't move. What could she even say? Sorry felt small. Too late felt cruel. After several long minutes, she wrote just one sentence. I wish I had walked back inside. She folded it neatly, tucked it into the box, then sat in silence for a while, listening for anything. She didn't hear a voice. No lightning cracked. No wind swept the note away. But something inside her softened. A pressure lifted, like untying a knot. May visited again the next week, and the next. She never wrote more than a few lines, but each time, the ache in her chest felt less sharp. Eventually, she brought paper and pens for others, left them in a small jar next to the box. Others began to come. A boy wrote to the sister he never met. An old man left a poem for the wife he lost. Even a little girl left a drawing of her cat. No one responded, but no one needed to. The shrine had become a quiet space of release, of letting go, without needing permission. One morning, years later, May returned as a visitor. She was older now, her hair longer, her grief more distant. But when she arrived, she noticed something new. Someone had built a roof over the bench. The box had been sanded and stained, and a small plaque had been added. It read, "Leave what you cannot carry and walk away lighter." May smiled. She sat down, and just like years ago, wrote one line, "Thank you for holding what I couldn't." Some things don't need fixing. They need releasing. Not every word must be heard. Not every wound needs an audience. Sometimes, writing it down and leaving it behind is the first step to peace. If there's something in your heart tonight that you've carried too long, what might it feel like to let it rest in silence? The trees are still listening. Some stories are like letters meant to be written, then released. But others are like stones we carry for years, never realizing how heavy they've become. As we move deeper into the night, the forest quiets, the stars thicken overhead, and a gentle mist curls around the roots of tall trees. In this hush, we find an old path, lined with pebbles once placed by someone long ago. Each step on that path holds a memory, a burden, a moment of letting go. Let us follow that path now into the walk of stones. Long ago, in the quiet folds of a mountain village, there lived a monk named Tenzin, who rarely spoke, not because he had taken a vow of silence, but because he was always listening. He listened to the rain tapping against clay roofs, to the moss growing between the temple stones, and most of all, to the footsteps of those who came to the monastery carrying something heavy. The villagers said that Tenzin had once been a traveler, roaming from forest to city to desert, seeking something he never named. But when he returned, he brought with him only a small linen pouch filled with smooth, round stones. Each stone, he said, was a memory, a moment he could not let go. a word he wished he hadn't said, a path he wished he'd taken or not taken. And so he began the walk of stones. Behind the temple there was a narrow trail, half forgotten by time, winding through bamboo and pine. Tenzin walked it every morning, placing one stone from his pouch onto the path. 1 stone per day, one burden at a time. Some days he paused longer. Some stones were heavier than others, not in weight, but in what they held. Soon villagers noticed. Curious, they asked, "Why do you leave your memories behind?" Tenzin simply smiled. "Because I can't carry them all." That answer stayed with them, and slowly others joined. A woman grieving her son came with a stone painted with his name. A man, racked with regret over betrayal, brought a jagged piece of slate. Children left stones with drawings of things they missed. A house that burned, a dog that ran away, a grandmother who never woke up. No one judged. No one picked up another stone. The path became a mosaic of sorrow and surrender, a trail of truth left out in the open, where it could soften under the sky. One rainy spring, the river flooded. The trail disappeared under rushing water. Villagers mourned the loss of their sacred path. But when the waters receded, something strange had happened. The stones had shifted. Rearranged by the flow, they now formed a spiral, one that led to the center of a small, dry clearing. There, Tenzin stood. He looked at the spiral and said softly, "Now, it brings us in, not away." He took one more stone from his pouch, perhaps the last, and placed it at the center. Then he sat beside it, legs folded, hands resting on knees, and he breathed. Years passed. The spiral remained. Pilgrims came from distant villages, not to see the monk. He had passed on long ago, but to walk the spiral, to bring their stone, to leave what was too heavy to carry back. We all carry stones, moments that grip us in silence. But we forget. The earth already holds so much. It knows how to take weight, how to turn it slowly into stillness. Letting go is not erasing. It's choosing to stop gripping. And sometimes you just need to walk until the stone feels ready to be placed down. Sometimes the heaviest burden is not what others gave us, but what we promised ourselves and failed to become. The night deepens. Crickets sing softer. The wind brushes through the tall grasses like an old friend. In a clearing ahead, there's a wooden swing swaying gently, not pushed by anyone, but moved by the breath of the night. There, a man once sat alone, struggling with a name he no longer recognized, his own. Let us sit beside him now, in the story called The Swing Under the Bodhi Tree. There was a man named Daichi who once believed he would become a great teacher. From the time he was young, he memorized sutras with precision, spoke with clarity beyond his years, and held the silence of the meditation hall like it was part of his breath. Everyone said, "He will guide many." But life, in its curious ways, does not always follow the outline we write in our minds. As Daichi grew older, his mind grew louder. He doubted his insights. His teachings felt hollow. He compared himself to others, more eloquent, more revered, more certain. And slowly, he stopped teaching altogether. He left the temple. He wandered. Until one evening, years later, he came to rest beneath an ancient Bodhi tree, its roots wide like rivers, its leaves trembling like quiet prayers. There was a wooden swing hanging from one of its branches. It creaked gently in the wind. Daichi sat beside it and whispered, "I was supposed to be more than this." He stayed there through the night. The moon peeked through the leaves. Fireflies wandered nearby like thoughts looking for a place to land. In the silence, he remembered a story his teacher once told. The tree does not weep when the leaf falls. It simply grows another. He had always thought that meant impermanence. But now, sitting here, it sounded different. It wasn't about loss. It was about continuing. Not with what was planned, but with what is. As dawn approached, a child wandered into the clearing. She saw the swing, ran toward it, then paused when she saw Daichi. "Can I sit?" He nodded. The child climbed on, gripping the ropes with joy. "Will you push me?" He hesitated, then stood. With each gentle push, he smiled. She laughed. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking of who he should have been. He was simply present. More children came in the mornings. Elders wandered in the evenings. Some sat to talk. Others said nothing. And Daichi, without intending to, began teaching again. Not through lectures, not through sermons, but by being there, by listening, by gently pushing a swing, by sharing his silence. Years later, when the villagers spoke of him, they didn't call him the failed monk or the teacher who left. They said, "There is a man under the Bodhi tree who makes silence feel safe again." Sometimes the dream doesn't unfold. The path disappears. The title never arrives. And yet, the essence of who you are remains quietly whole. Letting go of who we were supposed to be is not failure. It is the beginning of becoming who we are meant to be now. And so the man beneath the Bodhi tree let go, not with grand gestures, but with quiet presence and the simple rhythm of a swing in motion You've now journeyed through many stories, each one a thread, gently placed across the fabric of your night. Each tale asking only one thing of you: to soften, to listen, and maybe, just maybe, to let something go. As the night reaches its stillest hour and the breath slows to match the rhythm of the trees, we arrive at the final part of our journey, a soft goodbye. Not a farewell from the stories, but a gentle bow to the parts of you they've touched. Let us rest now in the peace that remains. The night has stretched its arms around you. Each whisper of wind, each soft sound in the distance has become a part of your breath. A quiet reminder that stillness doesn't mean emptiness. It means presence. You've walked through stories tonight. Stories not of dragons or dazzling adventures, but of simple people. Quiet moments, honest letting go of anger, of expectations, of old dreams that never bloomed, of names we no longer need to live up to. And maybe, somewhere along the path, you let go of something too. You didn't have to announce it. You didn't need to understand it completely. It might have slipped from your hands like a leaf in water. That's the beauty of night. It does not demand from us. It simply invites us to soften, to surrender, to breathe a little deeper into who we are now. There's a kind of magic that only comes when the world is quiet. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shout. It rests. It lingers in the space between your thoughts. In the moment, your shoulders forget they were tense. In the breath you didn't know you were holding. Now, slowly, gently exhaled. And in that pause, a truth returns. You don't have to carry everything tonight. You don't need to be better or stronger or perfectly healed. You don't even need to finish letting go. Just loosen your grip. Rest is not a reward. It's a return to yourself, to the child you once were, who trusted the darkness not because it was known, but because it was gentle. If your eyes are still open, you're not doing it wrong. There's no wrong way to rest. If your mind still swirls, it's okay. Storms don't last forever. They soften, especially when they know they're not being fought. So let the stories do their work now. Not in your thinking, but in your stillness. Let their rhythm sink beneath the surface. Let your body be the temple where quiet wisdom lights its candles. Whatever today held, let it settle now, like dust returning to the earth. Whatever tomorrow holds, leave it unopened, like a letter not yet meant to be read. Right now, this is all that exists: a breath, a beat, a moment where nothing is asked of you. You are not behind. You are not late. You are simply here, where healing begins not with fixing, but with resting. where the practice is not action, but ease, where peace is not something you chase, but something that waits, right here, beneath the noise, beneath the roles, beneath the shoulds. Just you, held by the night. If sleep hasn't come yet, don't worry. Stay with the rhythm. Let the stories continue in your own way. Let your breath write the next chapter. Let your heart be the narrator. Let the forest return, the quiet river, the swing under the Bodhi tree. Let them all visit you again in dreams, not to be remembered, but to be felt. We'll end here, but your rest continues. As we bow out softly from your ears, know that our presence remains in your stillness. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself to move again, to float gently on the river of the night, to sleep not because you must, but because your soul says, yes, now I'm ready. So sleep well, dear one. The stories will keep watch. The forest will remain, and the whispers of the night will stay with you until morning.